there's an issue that you yourself should be very clear on with yourself in knowing what you want when it comes to whether or not you're open to a long-term relationship or marriage with a single mom. And there are some different things to kind of calculate in here because, again, not everybody wants the same thing. But if you don't already know what you want, you may find yourself getting sidetracked and committed into a life that really it's not what you were looking for. So I want to go ahead and dive into this and give you my own background story on how it's kind of evolved over the years when it comes to single moms, and especially single mom Filipinas in the Philippines. Now, going back to the late 1970s, in my own life, my folks had divorced when I was about 10, but I was glad that my mom just kind of took me and my brother and moved out on her own and got a job and, for about 5 years or so, took care of my brother and I on her own as a single working mom. She didn't have her high school diploma, so she went out and got her GED, studied for that, got that. Then she went to the community college and got her nursing aid certificate. Then she went out and worked in a convalescent home for a year, which was a requirement. I don't know if it still is. And then from there, she got a job as a nursing assistant, which ended up being her career for like the next almost 30 years until she retired. Now, after about 5 years of being a single mom and doing all these things, she did other side jobs before she got into the whole nursing aid thing, but she worked hard to provide for my brother and I. And she did not go out dating. Not once in those 5 years did she ever go out on a date. She would take night jobs to get the differential in pay and then sleep late, which is why I started learning how to cook when I was about 10, 11, and then just a whole busy day, no time for dating. Now, after about 5 years or so, she then met who became later my stepdad, and I remember it all very clearly. So they got married, and he owned a home. We relocated from Riverside. It took me about a year or so for it to grow on me. The whole country life versus city life kind of thing. And at first, he and I really didn't get along too well. Not because he was a bad guy or anything. I was a teenager. I was used to being the man in the house. I was the one that my mom always consulted. All of a sudden, he's in that position, and, I kind of made it hard on him. But after about 2 years, I finally took him aside, just he and I privately, and we had a conversation. And I told him, I am so thankful that you married my mom, because I started to realize that he was a guy who took on a woman with 2 kids. He provided a home. He worked a steady job. Together with their income, they invested and they did really well and all that. And he loved my mom. My mom loved him. They were like 2 peas in a pod. They did all their gardening together, their shopping together, they carpooled together, they retired at the same time. They were just inseparable until he passed away from cancer, many years later, about 28 years later. And that was my first impression of a man who chooses to marry a single mom. I can honestly say I highly respect what he did. He took on quite a challenge. And as the years went by, we became his sons more than his own 2 sons. So now skip forward through the 80s, the 90s, the 2000s, all the way now to the present day. A lot has changed. In the West, you're already familiar with how it is. Single moms are not single moms just because they married some guy that turned out to be a horrible husband. Many of the single moms today were never married in the first place. They have a couple kids because, let's face it, they were just whoring around. And then you got the women who are single moms because one day they just decided they're bored being married or they're not into it or whatever. And conveniently, they can just file for a divorce, throw in some fake domestic violence charges, and it's a big cash payday for them. And once they start getting that money rolling in and take half of his retirement, they start thinking, well, heck, I'll just rinse and repeat this process. So they start looking for another sucker. Now, this worked up until about maybe 10 years ago. guys were still falling for it. Guys were still out there looking for a decent woman and thought to themselves, well, gee, here's this single mom. Surely she will appreciate that I'm going to provide for her kids, not just financially, but teach them to be good, decent people, be a provider, love her, meet her emotional needs, the whole ball of wax. Surely this woman will appreciate that. Well, as the last 10 years rolled by, men started wising up and realizing that they don't. And I won't say all, but the majority. The majority of Western single moms do not appreciate the sacrifices and contributions that this man brings into their life. Now, they're aware of the contributions, they just don't appreciate it. In fact, they're so aware of his contribution, they want to get all they can, which has led to this whole attitude from, again, single moms who have let themselves go for the most part, sitting around on dating sites, screening men that really are out of their league, saying, well, unless you have a high income, you own your own house, you own 2 cars, you're 6 foot tall, and this and that, don't even bother messaging me. Because they're not looking for a relationship, they're looking for somebody to be their next lottery ticket. They are a parasite looking for a host. That's what's going on. And so now men have said, enough. We're not falling for this anymore. And now these same women are like, I can't find a good single guy. Yeah, they want nothing to do with you. When you're already now approaching your 30s, you got a couple of kids, a whole bunch of debt, bunch of emotional trauma, don't even know how to connect with a man anymore. Why would any man be attracted to that? He'd rather spend his time on his hobbies or make money or travel. So these women did it to themselves. So this brings us now to today's expat, who is single, divorced, widowed, and he's heard about how, yes, there are an abundance of traditionally minded Filipinas in the Philippines who are single moms who would appreciate the fact that a man cares enough about them to take on her and her kids, the package deal as it's often been called. And for many men, again, I've been here in the Philippines since 2012. I've spoken to so many men who married a Filipina, single mom, and it has worked out so great. She has been appreciative. Now, there's been horror stories too of guys getting fleeced, but if you look at the overall data, the overall instances, the horror stories are like 5 to 10%. And again, it comes down to what kind of discernment do these guys have? Because I would say that a lot of these guys who pulled the trigger and married a single mom anywhere, United States or Philippines, they did not know how to read or act upon the red flags that showed themselves while they were dating. They were so fixated on, oh, I've got a pretty younger woman. Okay, so she's got some younger kids. Go ahead. Let's go to the altar. Let's sign up. Let's get married. Those guys do it to themselves. They should have taken a year to get to know her and be focused on her character. Okay, so you already figured out you find her attractive. Okay, check off that box. But that's not the only box. Guys need to spend a year with a woman. I've been saying this for over a decade. Get to know her character. Is she truly a good, decent person? Is she a loving person? Is she the kind of woman that would appreciate everything you bring to the table? And when you ask a Western woman, well, what do you bring to the table? You want me to have this high income, yada, 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 yada. What are you as the woman in the West, what are you bringing to the table? And invariably, because they don't have an answer, aside from, I'm bringing a whole bunch of problems into your life, all they ever say is, you get me. I'm the table. No, come on, we're not stupid. But in the Philippines, your odds of coming across a single mom who will appreciate you for all that you do is so much higher. And here's where a problem has been created. In the West, with the whole red pill movement, which I'm not against at all, but in this whole red pill movement, there's been a lot of caution given to men about these parasitical, mercenary women in the West who are just out to trap you like a spider to a fly. And that's a warning that needs to be listened to. But here's the problem. Guys take that warning with them to the Philippines thinking, well, they're all the same. In fact, I see it in the comments all the time. All women are the same. All women are hypergamous. All women are selfish. All women are out to take your assets in every country. The problem is that's just not true. That's like saying all men are physically abusive. All men are alcoholics. All men are cheating dirtbags. You see what I'm saying? It's not true. It's just these guys have gone through some valid personal trauma. They got raked over the coals in family law court, and now they're taking that trauma with them to the Philippines. And they never calculate, wait a minute, I'm in a different country. I'm in a different culture. It's not that every single Filipina single mom is going to be appreciative, but the odds are way higher. In the United States, I'd put those odds at under 20%. In the Philippines, I'd put it over 80%. That's how much of a difference it is. Again, you're going to have horror stories anywhere you have human beings involved, but it's a matter of the odds and the ratios. And your odds of finding a decent, loving, single Filipina mom in the Philippines is way higher than anywhere in United States, Canada, Europe, Australia. So you have to go with the odds. Now, I started out by saying that you have to know what you want before you go making any commitments and, date accordingly. You need to ask yourself, do you even want kids in your retirement life? I mean, any kids. Do you even want to make any more babies? I know I didn't. I'd already raised kids. And I dated for 7 years, and I let go and walked away from so many wonderful, great Filipina women. And I did not make a commitment there because they either already had some kids, or in our conversation, again, getting back to getting to know them, they made it clear, well, at some point I do want to have some kids. And I was like, well, okay, well, we'll have whatever time we're going to have. And I would tell them, this is a deal breaker for me. That's something I could not compromise on. I knew I did not want to be raising any more kids. Now, people can say that's wrong or selfish or whatever they want. I really don't care. I have a right to my preferences. So that created a bottleneck where I dated for 7 years. And I took a lot of criticism for it. People were like, oh, he's just playing around. He's playing around. Again, you don't know somebody until you spend time with them. It's called dating, and you get to know them. And then as you go down the road, you realize, oh, they want more kids, or they've already got kids. Usually you find that out second, third date. And some of them, and I've had this experience so many times, we met, didn't know each other, went on 3 or 4 dates, started talking about kids, all in the hypothetical. And do you want more kids? Oh, yeah, I want more kids. Okay, all right. I got to let you know, I'm enjoying your company and everything, but I am not going to ever get married and have more kids or take care of any kids. And once we had that figured out and established, it was like, okay, she's going to continue dating and looking for Mr. Right, who is willing to raise her kids or give her babies if she has none. And until she meets that guy, yeah, we'd keep dating and spending time together and whatever, but we both were on the same page. Now, fortunately for you guys, I started this process back in 2012, and it took until 2019 before I met my wife. And I had met other Filipinas who also were already in their 30s, and they told me as we sat down over coffee, I remember sitting down with this one over by Starbucks at Ayala, and we talked for 3 hours. I just kind of saw her there getting ready to go inside, and next thing you know, we're sitting there talking on the patio for 3 hours. And she was already like 31 years old, and she told me, she goes, I hope you don't think I'm a bad person. And again, remember, this is a Filipina saying this. She said, I hope you don't think I'm a bad person, but I don't have kids, and I never want to have kids. And that was like music to my ears. And of course, I asked her, well, why? What's your your motivation? What's your reasoning? And she said, well, because I stayed single, I was able to work OFW. I managed my money, and now I can look at pursuing like some kind of a business to start. She said, I can continue my education. I can take trips in Southeast Asia whenever I want to. I don't have kids to take care of. She goes, I like this lifestyle, and the only thing I would change is having a man in my life who does not want kids. So you can imagine, 3 hours of conversation, things were looking pretty good. But again, dating is where you get to know the person. I ended up not staying with her, not because of the kid issue. That worked out great. But when it comes to compatibility, there's other things. There's other deal breakers. So all that to say that from 2012 to 2017, it was like you looking for a unicorn to find a Filipina that did not have kids and did not want kids. Now, skip forward to post-2019, data plans in the Philippines became very affordable. So did smartphones. You have all these Filipinas now online all through the whole pandemic of 2020. And now they're spending all this time online, talking on forums when they're not on TikTok or whatever, and even on TikTok, hearing from other Filipinas, there's more to life than pumping out a bunch of kids when you're 16, 17, 18 years old. There's a whole lot of advantages. So from 2020 forward, myself and other guys that, again, I do consultations with or I have lunches and meetups with, or we talk online, now, the number of Filipinas who are willing to have a life without kids has just gone up exponentially. It's not the rare unicorn that it used to be. Again, the internet changed all that with the exchange of ideas. So now, post-2020, finding a Filipina who has no kids and does not want to have kids ever is a much easier task. I have met several, and like I said, the only reason we didn't stay together was because of compatibility issues, but not over the kids issue. So I hope that gives you something to think about. Try to understand that the Philippines is not the same single mom attitude that you see in the West. In the West, you've got a single mom who has run herself into debt, and she's looking for a man to get her life right and secure her into a life of luxury, a life that really she can't merit. She's not willing to cook. She's not willing to clean. She expects to have nights out with her girlfriends, supposedly. I mean, she's basically not really bringing much to the table. Whereas a single mom that you meet in the Philippines, for the most part, again, I would put that at 80% or above. These Filipino women, so many of them, they're either working at a call center, they're working a job, and they want to keep working. So if you want a woman that's got a job and is going to share with carrying the finances, you can find that. And in among the province women, she's not asking for the moon and the stars. So many Filipinas that I talk to, I ask them, what do you look for in a man? What do you expect when you're dating a foreigner? And consistently, they've said two things. They told me, number one, they want a man that's not going to cheat on them. That is so important. That is like high top priority. They would be dating younger guys if it weren't for the fact that so many of them end up cheating on them. That's the reputation they have, both foreigners and Filipinos. The second thing that they've always told me that they wanted, financially, they weren't looking for a jackpot. Usually the way they phrased it was, well, I don't expect to live in a mansion, which, by the way, your average single-family 3-bedroom home in the United States, they'd consider that a mansion. So they would tell me, that, well, I don't expect to live in a mansion. They just want to know that they have the security of a home, that the bills will get paid. They're not going to be worrying every 2 weeks whether or not there's money for rice to put rice on the table. They're not worried. The man is going to provide. He's going to provide shelter. He's going to provide groceries, maybe go out to the movies once in a while. None of this, you got to be 6-figure income and own 2 luxury cars. None of that nonsense. The bar is much more closer to a normal level with a Filipino woman. Like I said, her definition of financial security is she never has to worry that the basic bills are going to get paid. She doesn't want that stress. And she doesn't want the stress of wondering if her man is out cheating on her every time he leaves the house. And if a guy can provide those two things and he's willing to be a father to her kids, well, again, you're going to find a lot of women who appreciate that. Now, as always, my caveat is you've got, by my estimation, which I don't have any, empirical data for, but just after living here for 13 years, you're going to have these Filipinas who have every reason to appreciate you. You are literally pulling them out of the fire. They've got kids they can't feed. They got kids that they don't have the money to give them the medical care they need. They have kids that they don't have the money to give them what they need in school. Fresh uniforms and money for field trips. And here, usually you have to buy your own papers and pencils and books and such. And you would think, and this is the mistake too many guys make, you would think, oh, she's definitely going to appreciate me. I'm going to take care of her kids. I'm going to do this and that for her. There is a percentage. Who knows what that exact percentage is? Guys will meet a woman, and it turns out she doesn't appreciate that. And one of the biggest deal killers is she'll let you provide for her and her kids, but is unwilling to grant you the authority to discipline these kids. And that's something you need to take note of. Watch for that in that whole 1 year process or less of getting to know her. Talk about it and then put it to the test. Find out, and this is so important, find out if she is willing to give you that authority as a father figure in her kid's life. Because if she only expects you to be a provider and strips you of any authority over her kids, you're going to have some little tyrants running around the house getting away with hell, and she expects you to keep your mouth shut. Now, I don't know about you, but there's no way in hell I'm signing up for that. So that's a huge point you need to take the time to figure out as you're dating the single mother. So don't get the idea that I'm saying, oh, every single mother Filipina in the Philippines is going to appreciate what you do. I'm saying the vast majority of them will, but you got to take your time. Be patient. Get to know her character. Talk about the child discipline issue. Talk about her expectations as far as how much you're willing to provide for, say, just her parents, not the whole family, not her brothers, sisters, cousins, and neighbors. No, her mom and dad. I've talked about that in more detail in other videos. But talk about setting boundaries. What does she expect when you start talking about, if we were married, we'd want to get a house? Well, does the word house mean 8-bedroom house or a 3-bedroom house or 2-bedroom house? What are you talking about? Clarify those definitions with her. Because the big mistake a lot of expats make is they say to themselves, well, I'm going to figure out over the next 3-4 months whether I'll marry her or not based on if we're having a good time or not. And that is not the way you figure it out. You've got to get to the core of these issues. Otherwise, you're going to be facing some real surprises after you've slipped a ring on her. So I hope that gives you some things to think about. Feel free to share your positions on what you know that you want. Do you want kids? Do you want a life without kids? Do you want a woman that works, that doesn't work? What have been your experiences? And we can hopefully all together learn and prepare, have a plan, and stick to the plan. See you there in the comments.